Morning, David.
Hello, Christopher. Good to
How
see
you
you.
doing? Sun's shining.
The sun is shining here. I don't know. Am I haloed today? I know there was a lot
Yeah,
of
you're all right. You're not too bad.
not too bad today.
Your
Good.
halo's on the side by the window.
I mean, I could turn away from it. I've got the screens across the window to
Yeah.
try and stop it coming in. Yeah,
No, we can see your whatever we want to call it.
yeah. Beautified appearance.
Humanity beautified.
Do I need a veil? Do you think? Yeah.
We're not
It's a
talking
bit.
about Moses today, though.
Yeah, I know. It's a bit like the charity that we have at one of the charities that I sit on at Broad Windsor called the John Gould Trust. And its sole purpose is that the funds can only be used for the beautification of the church in Broad Windsor. I might set one up for the beautification of the vicar of the rector of the Beaminster Team. You know,
I was going to say, what are you saying about your team vicar?
the beautification of the church in Broad Windsor. So there we are. So I'm here. No, not unveiled. Unlike Moses up on a hill somewhere. And no shining face like Jesus last week or the week before, whenever it was. There we are. No Callie today. She's at another more interesting group, obviously.
And who could blame her?
Exactly. Bit of Luke, bit of curing of demons or getting rid of demons, isn't it, Chris?
Demons.
Yeah.
Well, should we go straight into the reading today and be unconventional?
Go for it, Chris. Go for it.
So our reading is from Luke chapter 13. At that very hour, some Pharisees came and said to him, "Get away from here, for Herod wants to kill you." He said to them, "Go and tell that fox for me. Listen, I am casting out demons and performing cures today and tomorrow and on the third day. And on the third day I finish my work. Yet today and tomorrow and the next day I must be on my way, because it is impossible for a prophet to be killed away from Jerusalem. Jerusalem, Jerusalem, the city that kills the prophets and stones those who are sent to it. How often have I desired to gather your children together, as a hen gathers her brood under her wings, and you were not willing. See, your house is left to you, and I tell you, you will not see me until the time comes when you say, 'Blessed is the one who comes in the name of the Lord.'"
Hallelujah. Oh, I shouldn't say that, isn't
No,
it? Should I, Chris?
well, wrong time
No,
of
I
year.
shouldn't say that, isn't it? Oh, yeah.
Oh dear.
Is there
Here we
another
go.
word that can
10 Hail
express how
Marys for you then, David.
I don't mind a few Hail Marys. Regular. I get one of me many what do you call them, prayer beads down.
Rosaries.
Rosaries are there in front of me. That's one belonged to a former vicar of one of your parishes and a long-term resident of Beaminster. What's his name? Gregory Page Turner. He gave it me many years ago.
Oh, did he?
He did. He did.
There you go. Good old Gregory.
Good old Gregory. So blessed is the one who comes in the name of the Lord.
So, all right, it's obvious that applies to dear old Jesus.
Yeah.
But what about anybody who comes preaching the name of the Lord or trying to live his example?
Well, yesterday was an Ember Day. You know all about Ember Days, Chris. And I like to talk about them midweek communion to remind people that ministry, being called to follow Jesus, following in his steps, perhaps even to Jerusalem, where we may get stoned. Not going to get stoned very much in Dorset, I don't think. But it's a job of all of us, and equally as important for all of us. So we're all called to proclaim the name of the Lord, or in modern parlance in Salisbury Diocese, make Jesus known. Bishop, if you are watching,
listening.
If you're watching, Bishop, see, we know what we're meant to be doing. We're trying very, very hard, and so yes. So blessed is anyone who comes in the name of the Lord, preaching him. And again, I would use that one word, but I'm banned, of course, for the rest of Lent from ever uttering it again.
Yeah, I suppose I've got an advantage as growing up and a little bit more of an evangelical when I was a teenager. We had a hymn, "Blessed is he who comes in the name of the Lord," and it ended with "woohoo," rather than the word we couldn't say.
We couldn't say.
And you've just disappeared in sunlight.
Have I? Oh, how awful. I'll turn around
That's
again.
better.
You sure it's just sunlight and wasn't the Lord striking me for saying that word?
There you go. We mustn't say that word in Lent. Only another 4 weeks to go. And
Woohoo, woohoo.
I think if I remember rightly, at Easter, I always set a challenge to people to count the number of times they say that word on the Easter Sunday Eucharist.
According to an organist I had when I was in the Lulworth team, he played at Winfrith in Newborough, and he was from Polish Catholic descent. You have to say that word beginning with 100 times on Easter Day, which is why all the hymns have got lots of it attached to them.
I'll set a challenge because I was amazed. I asked one year how many times it was said, and everybody came back with a different answer. And then they had a debate of does it include the hymns or does it include just the times it's written in the service sheet?
No. Any opportunity.
Any opportunity.
Any opportunity, I think. However, that's not what this reading's about, Chris, is it really? Herod wants to kill you. Go away, he said. He's told. And he comes back to them and says, well, why? I'm casting out demons, aren't I? I'm performing cures today and tomorrow. And then the next day, 3 days later, I'm going to finish my work. That has a resonance with something else, doesn't it, Chris? On the third day, I'll finish my work.
Doesn't it? I mean, it's an interesting contrast I was just picking up, actually, because you've got him going out and doing all that work and all the persecution and potentially of being killed and stoned.
Mm-hmm.
And then those verses in the middle, I desire to gather your children as a hen gathers a brood under her wings, which is the protection.
Yeah.
So I suppose actually the challenge there, and I'm just thinking maybe I might say this on Sunday, the challenge is don't just stay as a brood, as a little chick under the mother hen's wing, all nice and warm and cozy and protected.
Mm-hmm.
But actually, sometimes, yes, it's good there to sit back and rest, but we also need to go out and tell that fox to go away.
We do.
And we need a mixture of going out and performing and living on the edge, living dangerously, and living a nice protected life.
So where are the demons in today's world, do you think, Chris?
I think, and this is just a Chris Grask opinion rather than a huge theological debate opinion, is I think actually probably the demon's work that he's been most successful at in the last 30 years is, oh, you don't need God. God doesn't exist. You can live a moral life without him. You're good enough to work it out. You don't need God. God doesn't exist. And I think it's pervade that throughout our entire society.
Yeah.
And we're starting to see, I think, the moral code of this country is suffering for it.
So is the demons, or the demon, are they anybody that work against the furtherance of the good news of Jesus or making Jesus known?
Well, Jesus said, if you're not for me, you're against me.
Yeah.
So, and I think there is quite a bit of a picture stuff in the Gospels of a fight between good and bad. And if we hold up Jesus as standing up for the good, then we could use the word devil to stand up for those that are trying to promote the bad.
Yeah, it's interesting, isn't it? Because I was saying before we came on air that sometimes within our own churches, unknowingly, people become not the demon, but the stumbling block that Jesus talked about as well.
Yeah.
They get in the way of us sometimes growing the kingdom or doing what we need to do. And we have to try and live with that as much as we live with other things. Keep talking, Chris. I'm going to try and turn this screen a bit more because the sun is becoming a nuisance. I'm going to draw the curtain a minute.
I think there's two things. I often stand up and say, God's not quite this guy sat on a big white fluffy cloud with a big long beard and a pointy stick that says, "Oh, today it's you," or "Today I'm going to." And if we think of God actually being a God of love, which I use at every wedding I take, 1 John 1:14, isn't it? God is love;
That's
those
right.
who live in love live in God.
Yeah.
So if God's all that about love, rather than a guy sitting up with a pointy stick, then actually the devil and our demons are probably are also the opposite. There's not a devil sat on another black cloud with his three-pronged whatever and pointing at people and making people do bad, but he's just doing the opposite of love. And it's the influences we have that take us away from loving people and to stop us wanting the best for others around us and want to try and help us to be selfish and things.
And of course, going back to my ever favourite statement, which I've used so many times, if we stick to the love God and love your neighbour, which sometimes we're not always the best at doing as Christian communities, if I'm honest,
Yeah.
we've lost the point, haven't we, or lost the balance of what Jesus is asking of us or asking us to do.
Yeah.
Yeah, and so perhaps that's part of the cure. Perhaps we've got to start curing from within.
Well, that's it. I mean, I think, it's, dear Jesus, save the world and begin with me.
Yeah,
Because we haven't got it right. We're not perfect. We're just working out our faith in trembling and doing what we can to bring a little bit of the kingdom to this world and to shine Jesus' light to everyone that we meet
yeah,
and wherever we are. And it's quite a hard task, but we will there, and as with everything in Christianity, the workers are few.
yeah.
But we keep going and we do the little bit that we can and try and reap the harvest where we are so that people come and join in and see what a great life it is loving Jesus and living the best Christian life that we can.
And sadly, a bit still like today, Jesus is about Jerusalem. You are part of the problem. And
Yeah.
it's so easy to turn and to change if only you can. And the city that stones those that come. And we know we have, of course, in that story we read around Christmas, Acts of the Apostles. There was Stephen on his way to Jerusalem, being stoned with Paul holding the coat, or Paul as he became, one of the greatest of the Christian world, holding coats for people to stone him. Heading towards a place of pilgrimage. And still today, we see Jerusalem being a place of great pilgrimage. You've been there, Chris. I've been there. And we know that you've not only got the centre of Christianity, you've got the great central temple of Islam there as well, and the Jewish Weeping Wall, or they don't call it the Weeping Wall anymore, do they?
Western Wall.
The Western Wall now. And all these three traditions meet there. And it's still, though, the city that is fought over, perhaps, or through more than anywhere else. I don't know.
I think the same's true for us, isn't it? And the closer we get to leading to being part of Jesus' kingdom, the closer we get in a church. And that's not just the ordained; it's the non-ordained. Whatever rank we hold,
Mm-hmm.
if we're the close, Jerusalem represents, or our local churches represent Jerusalem, as in the centre point in the village,
Yep.
and then the cathedrals are the central point in that grouping of churches, etc.
Yep.
That's the relative of Jerusalem, and all the prophets that come. It's so easy to think that we've got it right and we've got Jerusalem in our hands. We've got God's kingdom. We're close to God. I know the answer.
Yeah.
And then the prophets come along and say, actually, you've got this bit wrong.
Yeah.
And we either accept what the prophets say and change and work out how to get closer to God again, or we kill and stone the prophets and say, I don't know what you're talking about.
That's right.
And
it's not the church, i.e., the church in England or the church wherever, that people are against. It's against the tradition of faith in Jesus Christ that he's under attack.
well, I think so. And I think, the faith in Jesus Christ comes down to giving to others.
Yeah.
And the rejection is the people who want things for themselves. People who want to take advantage of other people. If I look at what what's happening, say, in Ukraine. You know, the president of Russia just wants Ukraine to be his.
Yeah.
And he has no concern of the soldiers on either side being killed.
No.
And that is far away from living a life of faith where you're doing what you can to build up and help others.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I mean, you know, say you go and do, you know, we take funerals, we take weddings, we take baptisms, we go and visit the sick.
Yeah.
Not because it makes us feel good, but because you're helping people through necessarily difficult times. Oh, and that doesn't apply to weddings. I'm not saying weddings are a difficult time. That's a fun time. But, you know, we do what we can to care and help people through. And the whole Christian message is, you know, love God, live the Christian life,
Yep.
use words if we have to, but we're doing the caring and the loving. And if that means we're out in the world being kicked and persecuted for it, well, okay, that's part of our job. When the kicking gets too painful, well, then we'll run back in and hide again for maybe a week or two under the brood of the mother hen's wings.
But through all of this, we end all of our concerns, all of the difficulties, all of the worries, all of the anxieties, all of the kickings and the beatings, for want of a better way of putting what you said, we hand all of those into God's care, because ultimately, you know, as Christians, we deeply believe that He is the one that takes those burdens, and He took them on the cross, didn't He? Which is what that reference to 3 days is all about. His death on the cross and His resurrection again 3 days later.
Because I've been talking about school assembly this week, you know, it's Lent is preparing for Easter, preparing for Jesus dying on the cross, rising again. And that whole, you know, 40 days, yes, it matches the 40 days that Jesus went hungry in the wilderness, but it's actually 40 days to prepare for what does it mean for Jesus to die on the cross for me?
Yeah.
How am I going to change my life in relation to that over the
It's
next year or
interesting,
so?
Chris, and I've mentioned before that the youngster, the chorister, and whatever, I'd sit through the 3-hour Good Friday service, and when we got to the part of John's Gospel where Jesus actually dies, I'd find myself in tears, thinking, "How could somebody do this for me?" You know.
Yeah.
And it was interesting that the vicar of the time at the church in Smethwick, where I grew up, David Hewitt, his name was, one year talked to me about it, because he said, "I saw you were crying down," and I said, "Well," he said, "What made you think He did it just for you?"
Yeah, but he would have done, wouldn't he?
Of course He would, and we would do the same, you know.
Yeah.
And of course, the point is, as we say in our services, you know, Jesus died for you know, the one prayer, He receives the body and blood of our Lord Jesus Christ, which He gave for you, and He died for you. But of course, you means the whole of those of us who are worshipping together at that moment, and it's very interesting.
Yeah,
Well, Chris, go on,
so
carry on. Carry on.
the you is both singular and plural, though, isn't it, in the
It
English
is,
language?
of course it is. Of course it is. Yeah, absolutely. There we are. Well, dear viewer, I hope that's been useful in your weekly thoughts. Sorry for disappearing halfway through to close the curtain, but I was starting not to be able to see the screen. The sun was right across it myself, so there we are. And I'd hate not to see Chris's smiling face, of course. There we are. And we look forward to seeing you next week. Hopefully, Carly may even be with us. Callie, sorry, may be with us next week.
Are you going to try and get a veil for your face for next week when the sun comes out even brighter?
It can be arranged, Chris. It can be arranged. Can be arranged. Yeah, can be arranged. But there we are. Well, Chris, I was tidying some stuff up off the computer early this week to create some space on it, because it started to get a bit full of stuff, and I emptied all of the stuff that's within the Rev Chat folder. And I was amazed. You know, you're in your 5th year of being here with us. 5 years. Doesn't seem
5
that
years
long.
of Rev Chat.
Yeah. Doesn't
Does
seem
that
that
mean I've
long.
been repeating myself?
More than likely, we all do. That's okay. But I can't believe it's been 5 years since you joined us. It didn't seem that long.
No, so how long's Rev Chat been going?
Well, we started before lockdown. And so 2019, 6 and a bit years,
6
I
years.
thought. I think Joe and I certainly did for 12 months on our own before, anyone else stumbled across us or came and joined us.
Yeah, I think the first one I saw was you and Joe sat in, I think it was Joe's garden with a camera on the patio table.
That's right, with the tractors going past.
With the tractors going past because it was silaging season.
Because that was COVID and it was freezing cold. If I remember right, we had our hat and coats on, didn't we? It's just, as long as we sat so many feet apart, we could do it, couldn't we?
Yeah, there was rules like that, wasn't there? God. Thankfully, that's all history now. Anyway, dear viewer, I'm sure you didn't really want to listen to that. That was your little bonus if you listened to it all the way to the end.
Well, also, just say, I have kept, the one thing I did keep, I kept an email which came from Graham, your lay reader, to tell us that at the time, because of COVID, his mum wasn't able to join in worship, and he'd sent her copies of RevChat to encourage him to keep going. And also, he'd sent it to the community in wherever it is. He has his hideaway place in the Spanish island or somewhere or other.
That's in Tenerife.
In Tenerife, that's right. And you think, all those years back. But there we are. Keep on. Make Jesus known, dear viewer. Kick out the evil intentions of people. And we'll see you next week.
Okay, see you soon. Bye, dear viewer.
Bye now.